6:41 p.m. Normally I'd ask if everybody had a chance to read the minutes, but I don't think we got the minutes from the last meeting, did we?
No, I'm still getting those from my hand.
Okay, all right, great. Yeah, I know you weren't at the last meeting, Josh. So the next thing on our agenda is order FY 21-018, which is the old high school personal sale agreement ratification, Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District. I did ask Josh to see if we get Tony on here to talk about it. And I don't believe.
He actually just emailed me. I'm sending him the link for the Zoom right now. And he should be in just a moment.
Does anybody have any comments real quick before Tony gets on, or?
This is Kathy. I just wanted to get some information about how they came to the number.
Yeah, I mean, none of us, I don't think none of us have seen the personal sale agreement, right?
Well, it's on the, if you pull up the town council,
Yep.
it's in there.
And I'm sorry, I cut you off too, Kathy. What were you gonna say?
Sorry, I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Bob's calling me.
So
Hi,
the
Bob.
actual agreement with the
Do
number
you
on
have the
it
email to zoom in?
is in the town council agenda for tomorrow night.
I know. I asked Josh.
Do you have something to say, Julie? Did we lose Julie?
She's
Tony,
there
you
just
on?
on mute.
Oh, is she?
It sounded like she was talking to Bob,
Oh, okay, thank you.
trying to get him online.
Tony, you there? Tony's on mute too.
I'm here.
Okay,
Oh, hey,
neither do
how
I.
you doing?
All right, I'll see if, I'm trying to talk to them, but the CPC people I think are talking now. So let me, maybe not. Okay, I'll see if I can get someone to get you in. Okay. All right.
So Tony, we just started looking at FY 21-018, the old high school person sale agreement ratification.
Yep,
Do you have some information for us?
I do. Hold on one second. All right, so the two towns have been negotiating this deal for over 15 years. And originally they were looking for over like $3 million. The council's been involved and they're aware of the most recent negotiations, which were, a lot of them were done in the behind closed doors. What's the legal term? I apologize, escapes me.
Executive session.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the district's going to end up deeding the building and property within 30 days of the approval. It's going to be paid for over the next 12 years.
Hey, Tony, what's the final price? I don't see it here.
700,000, I believe. Yes, 700,000.
Tony, I know it was behind closed doors, but, and that the original number was 3 million, but were they based on something? Do we know? Like, was there an evaluation of the property
Well,
done?
yeah,
Like, how did we come up with that number? Was it
The value of the value of the land itself far exceeds the $700,000. Never mind the building. Now, again, when you're dealing with schools and school buildings, they typically have a unique purpose, so that, in fact, sometimes can devalue the land. But yeah, in discussing this purchase price with the assessor, she felt that this was in the best interest of the town to, if this is a price we could negotiate, to do so.
And then, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I know at the time when we were, looking at voting on the new school, there was a lot of conversation about if this doesn't pass, then we have to move the district offices out of the school because we can't use the school anymore because it's owned by the district, and we might have to move the district offices. Was there any talk about that? Or are we going to now allow the district offices to stay in a Bridgewater owned property? Do you know?
Yes. They will stay there.
I don't know if I know I have the agreement because it's on the other agenda, but I don't know if it says that, if there's anything in there that talks about that.
I know of no plans to move the business offices.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tony, Nathan, will the business office be paying the town rent, or?
That hasn't been discussed at this time. I do know that the town manager and the district are, Kathy, you may know something about this, they're re-looking at the district agreement in itself to see if they're going to make any changes to the agreement.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, Tony, as well. I've been included in those conversations with Michael.
Okay. So that's still ongoing.
I mean, I agree, the value of the land itself there.
Well, what's the other choice? The other choice is we don't have a junior high school, right? Am I thinking about that the right way?
Right, we'd be down a building and we'd have to relocate the students that are,
Yeah, so I mean, with everything we voted on the other school getting rebuilt so we can get the 8th graders out of the high school, it seems like getting this behind us makes sense. I don't know if $700,000 is the right number or not, but
if Rainham's happy, we're happy.
All right, do we have any other discussion on this or any public comment input on this?
So you guys do understand it was jointly purchased, right? So that whole land, when that all started,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
goes way, way, way back
yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
in the 60s. I think Carlton might be raising his hand. He may have some.
Oh, yeah, I can't
Yeah,
see that.
if the price is $750,000, that's a really good price for the town of Bridgewater, given the
Exactly.
cost that we were talking about before. It solves a lot of problems, and there's a lot of potential other uses that I'm aware of. If the town owns some of that property, there's some good things that could happen out there also. So I would encourage you to thumbs up on this purchase. That's a really good price.
Is it 700 or 750?
700,
700.
That's even better.
even
So
better.
it's 700 and it's actually paid over, I can read it, it's paid over.
12 years, I think.
12.
Paid over 12 years, 70,000 for the first 7 years, and then 42,000 for the last 5.
Just to
And the
put it in,
payment starts July 15th of fiscal year 2021.
to put it in context, the fact that we've converted to LED lights in town will cover the major part of that cost.
That's your deal.
Do we have a motion?
Eric will make a motion to approve, Nate.
Julie,
Thank you.
second.
second for Julie. All right, Josh, you want to do a roll call, please?
Nathan,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
I,
Leah,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everybody. All right, the next one on the agenda tonight is FY 21-017, transfer order CPC recommendation, Central Square Congregational Church. It has a note under here that that CPC members will be in attendance to answer questions, but I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe Carlton and Gina, you're here as
Correct.
members of the church, correct? Or
No,
Well,
we're CPC.
right.
okay, you're
and
here.
we
Okay,
have
great.
Rachel, Barbara, and Gordon are from the Congregational Church.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for
And
clearing that
Terry.
up. And Terry, I know that the committee did have some questions last time around. I'll open the floor up to any fellow committee members that have questions.
I have my questions.
so this is Kathy. Can I just say that if anybody from our committee is online and can look, there's a lot of additional information, again, on the agenda for the town council for tomorrow that we haven't seen yet.
What?
That
I was
we
told you all received everything we provided.
I had not seen it until I saw it on that link, so maybe I just didn't see it, but
Well, I'm vice chair of the CPC. Gina, if I might talk.
Yep, go right ahead.
We have reviewed this project since a year ago, and we spent a lot of time, and we did a transmittal memo that detailed out the historic nature of the church and why we were funding that, and it includes the votes that we took. There were 2 votes taken. One was to ensure that the committee felt that the application met the requirements for historic preservation. And I can go into details if you have that. And then the other vote was how much money to give to recommend to the town council for the church. So we've gone through a long process. It's actually detailed in great detail, I'm sorry, in that transmittal memo.
Okay, so I think it was Kathy that made the comment about the information received. So the FinCom did not receive the whole packet of information that we sent.
No.
one who said it, I guess I'd let somebody else say if they didn't see it, because I see a whole bunch of information that I obtained from the town council meeting agenda. I had not seen it before that.
Okay,
We did receive at our last meeting. It's a 4-page funding recommendation that the
correct.
committee received. Yep.
Okay, that's what I have in front of me here too.
But does that include all the minutes from your meetings and the information from town council and Michael Dutton regarding?
It does. We had
And
worked,
J.M. Goldstein memo.
It does not include all of our minutes, but it does include our specific recommendations and motions. And I believe it includes some of the transmittal information. Gina, help me out here a little bit, but I do believe it includes details as to why we recommended it.
right, what it gets into, and this is the 4-page thing that they probably have. Is it, nope, it's 3. No, I guess it is 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
Okay, it's just a cover letter to the town council. Then it's a funding recommendation. It talks about the project goals and eligibility, the background of the church, under that, recommended funding, other sources of funding for it that the church is looking for, is working towards. Then we have a section for additional recommendations.
Recommendations and outcomes. Mhm.
Right, and we're very specific for the uses of the $200,000. That's in there. Just a little background. The state has a 3-factor test that for church properties using community preservation money, or actually not, or any properties, not just church properties. Obviously, in this case, we used it for the church. We did have a letter from Attorney Rollins, as well as a letter from the attorney from the Central Square Congregational Church. We did work with Attorney Rollins, that he basically said, you go by the 3-point test. CPC discussed at length the 3-factor test. Just quickly, it's the primary purchose of the funding if it's to aid the church, versus historic preservation. Is it substantial aid to the church? And Carlton, do you remember the third one? Because I'm looking at a page.
Yeah, let me give you a wee bit more background information. There was in Acton, I believe it was, there was a church that applied for CPA money, and they approved a certain amount of money, but that included the restoration of some religious connotations of specifically a stained glass window. And that lawsuit was settled by the Supreme Judicial Court, who gave us these 3 specific requirements that anybody looking for money from the town that is not part of the town, whether it's private or nonprofit, that they had to meet that goal. The law says we cannot deny a church money because they're a church. That's federal law. But the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts looked at an amendment to the Constitution of the Massachusetts Commonwealth that basically said it's a non-aid. In other words, you cannot aid an organization doing their functions if you're using taxpayer money. And they promulgated out of that lawsuit, they denied the windows, but they also provided this 3-factor test. One of the tests was, is it substantial aid? Is it aiding the religious, forwarding of the religious purpose of the church, and one other. So
The
there's.
third one, Carlton, I'm sorry
Please.
not to interrupt, but I have the third one right here.
It's the risking of the passage of the anti-aid amendments.
Correct.
Yes, that we had to study that carefully. The anti-aid amendment. Jenny, what was the third element? I'm sorry, I don't have it on top of my head.
Are the following risks that are meant to be, excuse me, avoided by the anti-aid amendment implicated by the grant, whether the funding avoids the risk that prompted the passage of the anti-aid amendment, the risk of liberty of conscience being infringed, risk that public funding would lead to entanglement with religion, and risk that public support of religious institutions would threaten civic harmony.
Yeah, and one of those elements had 3 specific, 5 specific questions that we had to address. And
Right.
the committee spent a lot of time talking with the town attorney, and we voted, I believe it was 6-1 or 6-0, to that this particular application, because it's for the steeple and it's the restoration of the structure of the steeple on the outside. And it also, the steeple is of significant historic significance to the town of Bridgewater. It is in our historic district. It does have a history going back to the early 1800s. The church burned a couple times, but it was rebuilt. In fact, to the church members, I just found a recent plot plan showing where the church was expanded at one point. But we looked at all of that to see if, in fact, any religious connotations were included in their application. And they were very clear that they were looking to restore the historic nature of that steeple, which at one point, a couple of facts, it was the bell that called the fire department to come to fires and fight fires. It also served as a way to commemorate a couple of presidents that were lost in office. And it also, the church also has a significant secular function within the town, and that they support a number of secular activities in the town. But we decided as a committee that we did not trigger the anti-aid amendment to the Constitution of Massachusetts. That was our first vote, that we did not cause that series of questions to be activated. In other words, we met them all and we voted it forward. We then took on a long deliberation of how much funds out of the 1.5 million that was originally requested, how much could the town CPA actually fund, and what specifically was eligible for historic preservation. And the church spent a lot of time giving us details of what they wanted to do. They have a 3-phase plan to restore the building and other parts. One of the things that was most urgent to them, because there's a structural problem with the steeple, and there's a significant report that was developed and paid for by them. They've already spent upwards of $60,000 to $70,000 already to get these reports done. And there's a significant element of that steeple area that is historic and needs to be preserved. And so we took a vote for the amount of money, and we had a 3-hour discussion on that. And we finally settled on the amount of $200,000 to support the steeple. They obviously will have to, they've already funded some of it, but they obviously will have to fund even more, raise money to really complete the project in its entirety, especially the steeple. But we felt that the town and their history would be serviced well if we provided $200,000. And I did an analysis after the fact, and I came up with very specific, they had provided us some specific costs, and I totaled up those costs specifically, and it was like $198,000 in terms of historically eligible elements of that steeple restoration. So we felt very comfortable that we, one, didn't activate the anti-aid clause, and number two, that they had historic elements that $200,000 would help restore.
So,
I hope I'm clear now.
Okay, to elaborate on what Carlton said, we're very careful to look at what elements of their request we considered maintenance to the church, general maintenance that should be paid by them and weren't actually part of the historic preservation. We're very careful, looked at that, pulled out things that we thought were general maintenance. Things we left in were like the steeple windows, the belfry louvers, things like that, that are actually part of restoring the historic preservation of the steeple, not just maintenance to it. So we're very careful in what we looked at. One thing to mention is if awarded the grant, the church will, it's mandated that they pursue a deed restriction on the property. Carlton could probably speak more on deed restrictions, but it is a requirement that they obtain a deed restriction.
And in all likelihood, the town will hold that deed restriction. And that, it's not pro forma, but it is required to have a deed restriction. Something else went through my head I know, the steeple, as you'll note, the steeple is not topped with a cross. It is topped with a weather vane. And back way when, before we had all the modern weather casting and stuff, that's how people kind of studied the weather. They knew what way the winds were coming. They knew from whence wind blew to create storms, etc. So all of that has a historic element to it. And the windows up in that steeple and the siding, the other piece is they're going to replace the siding that is a, what do you call it?
Vinyl.
Vinyl siding. They're going to bring that back to more of the original type of wood that's there. And any wood that's underneath that vinyl that's worth savings, it will be saved. And then they will do whatever restoration work they need to do. So we, again, belaboring this a little bit, but we really seriously spent a lot of time making sure that we weren't infringing on public, religious type, public funding for religious advancement. We do not believe that this project, as proposed to us, leads to religious advancement.
So this is Kathy. So did you get a legal opinion on that? Because it sounds like our legal counsel led you in that direction, that it would be, that there were multiple items to be concerned about, and the town manager headed in that direction as well. So I'm just trying to understand, like, they seem to be guiding you that it was impermissible, not saying,
Well,
but do we have a legal opinion that says?
Yes, we don't. No, we have a legal
we don't.
process. We don't have, the town attorney will not give us a yes or no answer. Many towns do it that way. But what the town attorney did is he spoke to each of us individually, discussing in detail his concerns about the anti-aid amendment and what that might or might not mean. And each of us, those of us that spoke with him, we talked to him, we heard him, and then we voted. He did submit a letter that essentially said that it's up to you guys, but be careful. So we were very careful.
And then the town manager did the same and basically laid out where to me, he laid out what you should look at that seemed to be infringing.
Where did the manager
Make it
do that?
impermissible.
Where did he do that? There's nothing from the town manager about this specific projects that we have seen.
Well, it's to the Community Preservation Committee. It's on the Acton case and the impact of use of CPA funds. It's dated July 8th, 2018. It's attached in the town council.
That is correct. He did provide that as a general guidance to the committee. It does not say you cannot do that. It says, please
I didn't say that.
take it. I understand. It says, please be very careful.
And it says, here are some things for guidance. And then two of them led me to believe that he was implicating, and when it says it is highly likely that it is an impermissible grant.
I don't recall seeing that. Carlton, did you see that?
We've never seen that
No,
about
it says,
this
so
specific
as
thing.
applies to the Community Preservation Committee, the following should provide guidance. And he says, if the funds are being requested to offset costs which would otherwise be incurred by the church, it is highly likely that it is an impermissible grant. And then the fourth thing says, any request for funds to remove, renovate, restore any part of the church which itself carries religious significance, in parentheses, stained glass windows, comma, steeple, comma, et cetera, is impermissible. So when
Kathy,
I thought he was guiding towards this is impermissible.
Okay, Kathy, who was that letter addressed to?
The Community Preservation Committee.
Gina, that's the letter that he submitted that was drawn from the coalition's website. And
Oh, okay.
the coalition take great exception that he plagiarized their input and did not provide his own opinion to the town. It was basically written by other lawyers at the coalition level.
Okay, I have to go
And
back.
it's general, I want to be real clear about that. It's general guidance.
I understand its guidance. It just, his guidance seemed to have been different than, or was leading in a different path. So I was just trying to understand that.
I hear you loud and clear that you could read it that way. But talking to the town attorney, he gave us clear advice. He would not commit to yes or no. And so we were left with making the decision and reviewing all of the application and what the church was looking for. And I like this conversation because it's really important. And the committee of 6 or 7, however many did the final vote, to a person, thought that this was more of a historic restoration that did not infringe on the separation of church and state.
I have another question, but I don't want to hog the floor if other people have questions.
No, keep going, Kathy. It's Julie.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump
Okay,
in?
what was,
So the
I'm
other question that I
trying
have is,
to-
as I read through, and the minutes were attached as well. So as I read through some of the minutes, it wasn't clear to me whether the committee was saying, we are willing to grant you 200,000 out of the total 1.5, or we are just going to give you 200,000. We're recommending 200,000 for phase one. And so my question is the intent that this is it, we're done, this project is complete, the application is now finished? Or is the intent that the church may come back again with additional requests as they get through future phases?
the church has the option to come back. This application itself, this is what we've granted. They are welcome to come back. Anybody's welcome to put in our application with us. There's no guarantee that it would be funded. It would be looked at as we looked at this one here.
So of the
So-
original, so they came to us initially to the CPC and requested the whole 1.548 million.
Correct.
How
They
much,
did.
how much funds is the church providing on their own already before they made that request?
They've already spent 60 or 70,000 doing stuff that we cannot reimburse them for. So they've already spent, let's say 70,000, and church members, you can correct me on the actual dollar amount.
It's closer to 100,000, I think.
So they actually came requesting the entire project except for their preliminary work,
They
that
came,
1.5.
Well, the
Yeah.
preliminary work was included, but we cut it out right at the start because we can't pay for something that was already done.
but to answer your,
I
to
just
answer
want to
your
make sure I
question,
understand it correctly. So
to
did the
answer your
church,
question, could I
was the church
please-
already
may I
saying
please-
we are investing X amount of dollars and we're asking CPC to invest X, or was the church saying we would like you to pay for this whole thing?
The church originally came to us requesting the entire amount. We asked them to go back and break it down specifically so that, because we, quite frankly, we would not have voted for 1.5 million. We don't have that in our reserve accounts. But what we said is break it down. They came back with this phased approach, and then they came back with an even more detailed cost estimate regarding the steeple, which was phase one. There are other phases that they have funding that they've identified, not funding, but they have costs identified. But we said we would only deal with this first part. And we will only consider things that are eligible. And there's quite a nice list that are of eligible, and we included in that memo the things that the law states that are eligible for historic preservation. Those are the only things that we are funding. And it's not entirely, the total cost of the steeple restoration is upwards towards $450,000 or $500,000. And we will be on the hook for that.
So as a CPC, do we make sure that they have that required funding to do the other piece of, for their share of the project before we allow them to be granted the grant, or do we just give the grant?
That's up. We give the grant. We don't require that they have the money up front. One of the things that they had in their application is that they would apply for grants and things. We asked them to try to let us know what they're applying for grants, that they were actively seeking grants. They hired a grant writer, and that will go against their portion of it.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused because in one of the key outcomes on the document that you sent us, it says the contract will be awarded in October 2020 and the project is to completed by December 31st, 2022. So that would, to me, if you're awarding a contract, then they would have to know what all their funding would be.
That, right now, the situation is, and I'm gonna lose my battery here shortly, and I'll try to be succinct. Right now, we have provided $200,000 against a $500,000 project. They are responsible to get the rest of the money, and I doubt seriously that they will be able to start and break ground, or wood, whatever you want to call it, until they have full funding. They are in a capital, probably in a capital campaign. They were in a conundrum when they were working with us because they were trying to figure out how much money we.
We lost Carlton.
I think we lost Alton.
We lost Carlton.
I guess I'm just confused because so then I guess if we approve this as a town, then they would already violate, the contract will be awarded in October. So that means that this whole thing goes away and we have to start all over, as I understand it. Because they wouldn't be able to meet the requirements that you have set forth as a CPC.
Well, that could be, when we sent this, when did we send it?
But I
September
guess it's
1st.
going, but how can we vote on it if we know that it's not achievable as of the time that we're voting?
Well, as of when the contract, and correct, if you approve it tonight or put it off till your next meeting, whichever, I doubt that a contract will be done in a week and a half because the council would still have to approve it tomorrow. And that doesn't give a heck of a lot of time. My thought is that October contract award could easily be moved to November. I think that's just like an understandable thing. They're still looking to have their completion date by December 31st. I'm not sure, maybe someone from the church can talk about their campaign, their fundraising and grants to see where you stand. Like, do you have enough funds? And I know you've expended a lot already on the plans and the preservationist. I don't think that they'll start my thought that they'll start the project till they have enough money to complete the steeple. Barbara, Gordon.
So,
Someone?
this is Barbara. I can speak on this. We have Gale Engineering, who is doing the project for us. And he is, they're very patient and giving us a lot of time to raise the money, that they will work on the project as our monies come in. The grant writer has applied for at least 8 grants now, and these are annual grants, which if they're not awarded to us this year, we can apply again in 2021. And we've also started a new part, our committee, where a lot of big businesses, and I'll just give you one example, Walmart has charitable foundation accounts. And we are presently this week and next week applying to 30 large businesses and asking to help us in our project. So we're actively raising the money, and we just have a good feeling about everything that we're doing. And it takes 2 to 3 months before we start seeing any of these grants come in. And in the meantime, the deed restriction takes 3 to 4 months. So we thought we would start working on the deed restriction once we're approved by the Finance Committee and Town Council. So that we wouldn't be awarded any money at all, to my understanding, until the deed restriction is in place. So we're working very hard to raise money. This is not a good time to have a capital campaign, we all understand. So maybe 2021 we'll be able to have a capital campaign with our church members. So we're trying very hard to raise the money. The CPC has, if we're awarded the 200,000, it's basically almost 50% of the cost of the steeple repairs. If we act on repairing the steeple now, it'll be $406,000, whereas if we do it next year, they've projected a raise in the price to 500 something thousand dollars. So we're hoping to really start the project, and Gale Engineering is very patient with us. And we've also, the church has already put in approximately $104,000 of our own money just to do all the studies of the church. And it took us quite by surprise because we didn't think it would be this expensive. And we were thinking we would be able to recoup some of the money from CPC, but I totally agree with CPC. This is money that we spent before even an approval of the grant. So I understand where we just have to, we've spent our own money and that's the way it is. So if there's any questions I can answer for you, yes, we phase one of our project is the steeple. And to do the entire envelope of the exterior of the church, we have also phase 2 and phase 3, which would be a multi-year project, perhaps 3 or 4 years before we complete it. And one of the things that started us on this whole project was 2021, our church is 200 years old. So it's our anniversary, 200 years, right on the common downtown Bridgewater. It's just beautiful. It's old New England. People come from all over the country to see old New England white wooden churches, and we have one right here in town. So we just hope a lot of Bridgewater residents feel, even though they don't attend the church, but they see the structure on the church, and how can we let it just fail and, deteriorate? It's the building itself that we're trying to restore. A lot of us are historians, and that's the way we see the church as a historic piece.
Mm-hmm. The study that they had done by Brian Pfeiffer, Gale Associates, it was very thorough and in depth. I wish the FinCom had the whole application. It gave the history of the church, and it was actually broken down to, like, say, the steeple. What's historical? What's the historical part? What's the original part, or what the original windows were like that they're preserving or restoring to be the original. It was a very in-depth, which is why one of the reasons it cost them so much for it. It was an excellent report from the engineers.
So this is Kathy again. I just have one last comment that I would feel much more comfortable if there was something in here that said that we would not grant the money until they had secured the funding for their portion of the project. And I don't know if legally if we can do that or not, but I feel very uncomfortable based on what I'm hearing, saying, okay, I'm willing to go ahead and say we can award this when there's no way that they can award a contract in October. It doesn't even sound like they can award a contract in the next few months because they don't have their funding secured. So how can you award a contract without the funding secured? And I'm concerned about whether it really is permissible or not.
Could I address that for a second? This is Carlton.
Sure.
I'm sorry I lost my battery here. They have to apply to us and invoice us for any activities related to this. So while the grant, what would happen is the town, as they have done with the McElwain School, would likely appropriate the money, and then it would be held in an account. And that account cannot be spent against until we receive invoices against it. So I think that protects the town just automatically saying, here's $200,000 and do what you want. The other piece is the CPC is obligated by state law to monitor the project and to actually verify that anything we listed in there as being restorable or being funded to be restored must have been done. So we have to actually see that it was done. So I hear what your point is, not spending any money until they have full funding raised to do the project. But I think we're protected from a town perspective because we will appropriate the money, but we aren't just going to give it over to the church without an invoice against it. Demonstrated that we will
But
have.
why wouldn't we have that stipulation in there? I guess I hear what you're saying, Carlton, but they could still start working an invoice
The
if we've
grant,
approved it when they don't have the money to finish.
the grant that we give them, there will be a very detailed grant provided to them. In that grant letter, there will be a letter that says you've got this, and then there will be a very detailed grant award that specifies all of that information. That's basically standard practice.
Right, and it's possible, it's conceivable, but I really don't think it would happen. We could put the money aside, and if they never come up with the rest of it, it's conceivable that the project doesn't happen. We actually, CPC had a number of years ago had voted, I don't know if you're familiar with the Stanley Ironworks Park out in Parkland, the old stone building, which is, it's a gorgeous, well, what's left of it, it's a gorgeous building. To have that restored and shored up, where the money was put aside for it, some money was spent for it. There are contractors that were hired, because you have to have special people for that type of building, just never came back. There were issues. The town ended up, CPC ended up just taking that money. It was never given to anybody. It was almost like encumbered, put into an encumbered pot. Taking that money out and putting it back into our regular budget. It's possible that if the church, like I said, possible, not probable, that if they never come up with the money for their part, what we're giving the money should be a good part of the steeple, or about almost half of the steeple. I don't know how much, like if it would be feasible to do just what we're granting it and not the rest of it. That I'm not a construction person, so I wouldn't know for sure. I'm sure they could put the, like say the windows, or work on the belfry. So the money that we're recommending to grant isn't really contingent upon what they're getting, because we're only recommending to fund part of the work on the steeple, not the whole steeple. So they could replace the windows, they could fix the belfry, they could, I'm not sure, whatever else is on the list. So they could do that without actually having money to do the whole the whole steeple. Does that make sense?
This is Julie. I have a question on that. On the documents that were on the town, attached to the town council meeting, there's a line there that says, any portion of the community preservation fund grant not used for the purposes stated above will be returned to the Bridgewater Community Preservation Act fund. So does that contradict what you just said, that they could use it for something else as opposed to the
they cannot use it for anything except the details that we provided.
Correct.
Right.
So
when you say you could use it for windows or something, that's not what we're granting the money for if we decide to vote for this.
That's correct.
Yes and no.
Maybe I misunderstood. That's fine.
Part of our list on the bottom of page 3 is reconstruction of steeple windows.
Yeah.
So that's what I was talking about.
The wood windows. Yeah, okay.
But what you were saying, Julie, is if they decided to try to fix one of the windows or take more siding other than what this funding is for, they cannot do that.
Correct.
And that's why we monitor everything they do. They would have to come to us or use other money to do those other things.
Thank you.
The other reason this is important for them But it's up to you guys to provide whatever recommendation you wish. But it's like the McElwain School. The Community Preservation Committee voted $1.3 million out of our housing accounts to support that project. That money has been held in an account. It cannot be accessed until they actually have the project underway and invoicing us. But what they needed that money commitment to show is to get other funding from historic places, from other funding organizations. Without that commitment, they would not have gotten the money they needed to move the project forward. The analogy is here, the church needs to see this kind of a commitment so that they can actually show other organizations that they have in fact some commitment from the town to fund parts of this. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg issue, but it helps them actually fundraise for more money.
Thank you.
All right, this is Nathan. Do we have any other questions from the Finance Committee?
Yeah, one more quick question. Sorry, Nate. And we may not be able to answer this, but I'm just curious. Have we used CPC funds for church renovation projects in the past?
We've done the Unitarian Church behind the university's art building.
Unitarian Church received 2 grants.
Right. The total, I believe, Carlton, close to roughly 80,000 for the total of the 2
Yeah,
grants.
it's 70 or so. I don't have it in front of me.
Right.
We also
roughly,
had
yeah.
other church applications. We've had 4 grants, two to the Unitarian Church, and 2 other churches applied for money, but they chose not to do the deed restriction. And therefore, their money, they decided not to go forward.
Right. And one of the churches, the Episcopal, Trinity Episcopal, decided not to put the grant in because basically the 3-factor test, what they were looking for had to do with a stained glass window. Which windows are okay, stained glass windows are okay, but the minute they depict anything religious, they're not. So they opted not to put in an application. When I first started on CPC 1,000 years ago,
Andrew,
actually
sorry.
before I was on CPC, St. Thomas Aquinas had put in
That's
an
right.
application, but I believe theirs wasn't approved. I wasn't on CPC.
It was denied because it was not historic preservation.
For St. Thomas, I thought it had something to do with who actually owns the building.
Well, it was also the fact that they were trying to redo the whole front entrance. The Scotland Church also applied at one point. But to your answer, to not belabor the answer, is yes, there's precedent for funding churches in Bridgewater.
Eric,
Thank you.
Eric, can I
Could
just
I-
jump in to say that in the letter from Michael Dutton, in his closing paragraph, he says, however, based on the readings of the decision, it is likely that funds granted to other churches in Bridgewater in years past would not be so granted today.
That's an interesting letter because he's making a judgment for the committee and he's not the appropriate person for making the judgment. That is a guidance document to the committee.
Okay, I would like to, I look back while we were talking about the letter before. I do not have an email from Michael for that. I would love to see the letter. I don't recall,
Gina, we have it, and it's a
Okay.
guidance, it's the guidance document that he sent out after the Acton Church SJC decision. And he provided that to us as a committee before I was on it. He provided that as guidance. And he would obviously err on the conservative side on that. But it is entirely up by state law. It is entirely up to the Community Preservation Committee to make recommendations regarding funding. He has no
correct,
say in that.
correct, but I think Kathy said the letter was dated this July.
It was July 2018.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was looking back for, I'm sorry. But we didn't have the church application then. I think he was talking, at that time, we were talking about the Episcopal Church. So that's probably what he did it for, and that's probably what he was gearing it for. Because Kathy, we didn't have this application. We got it probably, we were working like a year on it.
Again, I'm going to say it again. It was general guidance to the
Right.
community preservation, warning us to be very careful.
Right,
this
and that was
project-
basic, right, and that was in, what started it with us was the Trinity.
For
Trinity
this
Church
project,
application.
we have been extremely careful
Correct,
to actually study that. We have, as I said before, we talked with the town attorney. He gave us a letter that was non-committal. He said, it's up to you guys, but I will talk to you one-on-one. We did that. And then we made our decision 6-1. I think that was 6-0.
no, it was 6-1, and
Okay.
the one nay vote was basically because of the amount.
Thank you.
He had proposed a different amount.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. This is Nathan again. Do we have any other questions out there? You know, my own thoughts on this is that I see this as a community preservation issue, the steeple itself. You know, the finer details of, you know, religion and state and the separation thereof, I don't believe it's necessarily within the purview of this committee. But we've asked some very sharp questions, I believe. Is there any public comment? Anybody from the church? Do we have anybody that wants to make a motion?
Barbara looks like she's trying to unmute herself.
I unmuted myself, but I don't, you asked if there were any comments from the church.
Yep.
I don't really have a comment. I don't know what else I could say. We're looking to preserve a beautiful historic building. And that's the only comment I have. But is someone else going to make a motion? I mean, that's not my job or my position. So
Finance Committee, do we have a motion? Either way.
Leah Wyatt, motion to approve.
Thank you, Leah. Do I have a second?
Second,
Who's that, Bob?
yes.
All right, thank you, Bob. Josh, can we do a roll call, please?
Sure. Nate,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Julie,
Nay.
Leah,
Aye.
Kathy,
Nay.
Bob,
Aye.
All right, so thank you, everyone.
2.
We can move on. We do have some other issues. I don't know if the committee wants to bring up some other things that we've had hanging around here.
Hey, can I just ask for clarification what the final vote was, please?
Yep, it was 4-2.
4-2. Okay, thanks, Josh.
Okay, thank you for your time, Gina and Carlton.
Okay, I thank you folks for your careful consideration too.
Okay, thank you.
Please go well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Finance Committee, do we have anything else that's? I don't actually have. Let's see, we have some additional committee discussion. Does anybody want to go through any of that right now? Or I know we've kind of gone a little late tonight. Go ahead. What do you got, Julie?
If we don't do them tonight, when would the next meeting be?
I'll just add to that. I think those additional discussion points are kept on so that we can discuss them at any meeting. It's not that anybody's waiting on
Yeah.
on something.
Well, there's just one thing, I guess, if I could bring it up, everyone, is, the discussion on the liaison to the school board committee. I know that both Julie and Kathy are doing an awful lot with that, and you, Eric, too. Do we have an official liaison as a committee?
Not that I'm.
Do we
I don't
have
think we
what?
do, and that's why we put it on there, because they're having meetings and they included people from the Rainham Finance Committee, which I understand it's very different there, but
Yeah.
we don't have any representation on that.
And how would we do it, do you think, Kathy? Would we have to set up a subcommittee, a school board committee subcommittee, or could we do just one person, or?
I think the intent was we could just do one person, and then that person would go to the school committee meetings or the budget meetings for the school committee, and then also be included in any meetings that the town manager was having with Rainham representatives of the finance committee or the school committee budget information.
Yeah, I know I certainly would like.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Kathy or Julie, you're attending those meetings now, or not?
I have not attended, but I'm familiar with some of the topics, just on as sidebars with some members.
So I
Are you
attend the school committee meetings and the budget meetings when I can, but I'm not attending them as a representative of this group. I'm attending them just to educate myself as a
Yes.
member of the town of Bridgewater.
Eric, what are your thoughts on how the best way to set that up?
I think we should just reach out to Michael and get his thoughts on why it's set up the way it's set up. I think I know I had the conversation with him, and I know that Rainham's structure is significantly different than us, and that was the difference between Rainham and Bridgewater. But I honestly, the history of it, I don't 100% recall, and I think it probably makes sense to just reach out to Michael and ask for his thoughts. I mean, I don't think it can hurt, but I also don't know why it was set up the way it was set up.
Okay, I certainly know the times that we've sat down, even as a subcommittee with the larger group in the school committee. It brings a lot more clarity to our discussions when we're talking about the schools, Okay, that's good advice. I'll reach out to Michael on that one. Is there anybody that would be interested in being at the liaison?
Are their meetings virtual currently like ours?
They must be. I would think.
Yeah.
I'll keep you in mind, Bob. All right, is there anything else that we like to discuss tonight that we have on the agenda? If not, we can have a motion to.
Hey, Nate, just before we adjourn or make a motion to adjourn, do we have a date for the next meeting?
Thank you for reminding me of that, Eric. What are the thoughts would be the best time? When's the next? I know we try to do it for town council meetings, right?
When is the next town council?
They're the 1st and the 3rd, right? Josh,
Yep.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, but the first one in November is the voting, so it may not be the 1st and the 3rd of November,
Yep.
Right.
is my guess.
All right, so what do you think? Is the 9th, is that Veterans Day weekend, the 8th and 9th?
Yes.
Veterans
Pulling
Day
up the calendar
that
to see if I
Wednesday.
can find it.
The next town council meeting is tomorrow.
And then it's the 10th after that. November 10th is the next meeting.
Is the next meeting after that? So
Yeah,
what?
and we know tomorrow's meeting, some stuff is going to come to us.
Yeah. So what do you want to shoot for? Do you want to shoot for the 9th or do you want to do it before that?
What day of the week is the 9th?
It's a Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the ninth or the second, right? The second.
Yeah,
Right.
the second.
So whatever works for the team. I'm available both days. So
As am I.
I can do both. So how about
I-
9? Does not the 9th is 6:30 work or do we want to do 7? I know we talked about 7 before.
I just have a question. Do you
Yeah,
think there'll be
I'd
something?
go with either one as long as I can get in.
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say? Was that Julie or Kathy?
Yeah, it's me. Do you know if we'll have anything to vote on in case we doing it the night before? If we don't have a
I know,
quorum, then
I
we
know.
might be holding things up. That's my only concern.
No, that's a valid point, actually.
This is Kathy. I lost my screen, but I don't know if you can hear me, but we will have something to vote on, I believe, because the free cash is on the agenda for tomorrow.
Okay, so let's do the 2nd then. You know, it's a good point. Then if we don't have a quorum, at least we got a little bit of wiggle room here. Would you
Not that I
rather?
don't have faith in the committee. I'm just,
It's just the reality of it, you know, sometimes.
I definitely will
Um,
not be available on the 2nd. I have to I'll be setting up for the election.
oh, so maybe not then. Okay.
All right. Are we back to the 9th again? Or we could do the 3rd, the Tuesday, the 3rd.
That's the election. I won't be available then
That's
either.
that's right. That's election day. So we're not doing the 3rd.
Okay, so,
Well, that's just one member we have. You know,
yeah,
7
but
on
she
the board.
comes. So,
I know. Can't win. We can't win. So what do you think? Do you want to do the 9th or the 2nd, everybody? Give me your thoughts. We're going back and forth there.
Yeah, I say we shoot for the
Nice.
2nd, and
Okay.
if we have to do the 9th, we know we can. And you know, Leah won't be able to make it, but she'll be able to make the 9th. So
Yep, I'll be able to make the 9th.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say the 2nd. If we can, we can do the 9th. Again, let's go back to the time. Do we like 6:30 still, or do we want to do a little bit later?
I'm fine with either one.
Okay, let's say November 2nd at 6:30 p.m.
Perfect.
Can I just ask a question? How many of our members are present tonight?
We had 6, including you, Bob.
Okay.
So
I
we were
had
actually,
one other question.
Yep.
One other question, because I haven't been able to attend meetings because of, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, we have new chairman and vice chairman. Could you review that for me?
yes, Nathan Schofield, me. I am the chair, and Eric Langone is the vice chair for the upcoming year, Bob.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, November 2nd, 6:30 p.m. is when we'll try to get our next meeting. We should have some business from the town council. Anything else?
Eric Langone, motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Leah Wyatt, second.
Second.
All right, do we roll call this, Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Julie,
aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved. Meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.